Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone and welcome to episode 199 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on how do men grieve miscarriages. And it's Friday the 7th of April 2022 as I record this. So the reason why I actually wanted to do today's episode was because traditionally men are seen not to be affected by miscarriages whatsoever. They seem to be emotionally stoic, cold, and like they really don't care whether their partner has just gone through a miscarriage. But this isn't true whatsoever, and this is something that we're going to address in today's podcast episode. And while this might not be the most joyous, it is such an important topic that I really do want to cover, and this is actually a lot more interesting than you actually realise. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest, and the first one I think is really interesting because it's really weird. No evidence that Mozart effect can relieve symptoms of epilepsy. The idea that listening to Mozart can reduce symptoms of epilepsy first emerged in the 1990s and has been widely reported in popular media outlets. It has attracted attention in part because drug therapies often cause severe side effects and don't work for almost a third of the people with epilepsy, so safer new treatments are badly needed. But as the authors of a new review and a meta-analysis point out, these claims about the Mozart effect are based on underpowered studies, which have been poorly documented and given an unfounded sense of authority. This analysis finds no evidence that Mozart's music can be used to treat the symptoms of epilepsy. To be honest, I don't think this is surprising whatsoever, and I don't really understand how listening to Mozart's music actually would do it in the first place. Like, I suppose listening to certain music might get you to relax more, which would change like the brain waves, and I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how it would ever work, and underpowered studies, they are a nightmare, especially after me doing like the research project on the gamification of autism. I hate underpowered studies. I hate studies with not enough participants in. I just hate a lot. I just hate a lot of that research methodology. So yeah, so this is a real problem. And again, I'm not sure why this was ever thought to work in the first place, but it's interesting, and it's good that we've now looked at this, reevaluated this, and found out that this doesn't work. But my personal rule is that if it's popular with media outlets, probably means it's not true. So moving on to the second one. So the second one is relationship problems tend to start long before a partner cheats. Cheating on a partner can have a severe impact on a relationship. For some, infidelity can mark the end of a relationship altogether, whilst others spend time rebuilding trust in a couples therapy or through intense communication. It's clear that an infidelity can cause relationship problems, but a recent study suggests that it can also be the symptom of an already declining relationship. The team finds that the well-being of a relationship starts to decline the years before infidelity happens, and in general, it doesn't fully recover. So I know I did an infidelity podcast episode that turned out to be really popular. I mean, I was shocked how popular it is. It is so much which either tells me people love the topic of infidelity, or there's quite a few people who commit infidelity and they want to understand either why they did it or if they can repair the damage. Both of them I don't have a problem with, and I think it's really good that if people have committed infidelity, that they're trying to learn about it just so they can hopefully repair their relationship. So all of it's really interesting, and I have got a bunch of resources in a folder on my phone about its possible future in infidelity podcast episodes because it is interesting, I think. Anyway, so going back to the article, I can definitely understand that because I can definitely see some people just wanting to commit infidelity because it's just how they are, it's just what they want to do. But other people, I can see infidelity. Like, if you think about how it's presented on TV programs, infidelity, they just do it because the relationship's old, their partner's never about though, and they just want the company. So that is very much an outcome of the bad relationship already. So I really understand this, and it's an interesting idea. And the final one is access to green space linked to reduced risk of postnatal depression. Postnatal depression or low mood experience after the birth of a child is a relatively common issue for new parents. The NHS estimates 1 in 10 women experience postnatal depression, though newer fathers can also experience mental health difficulties during this period, which we looked up in a previous podcast episode a few weeks ago. It's important then to figure out why this might predispose mothers to developing postnatal depression or protect against it. Researchers have recently identified one apparently protective factor: access to green spaces. Mothers whose neighbourhoods contained a greater proportion of green spaces shows a reduced incidence of postnatal depression, likely because easy access to green spaces enable them to get more exercise and facilitate social contact and neighbourhood safety. So first of all, I think we need to say upfront that of course this is correlational research. We cannot establish whatsoever that having a lack of green spaces leads to, or at least causes, someone to the personality depression. But equally, I don't think that's what the research is actually trying to point out. This is just something that occurs, and this is a protective factor. And I can definitely understand the whole exercise and the whole social contact thing there, because as we call this, it is a really nice sunny day, and it would have been nice to quite go outside and to meet up with some friends and such. Granted, I'm busy, and it's also pretty chilly outside, so that's a sort of negative about it. But I do understand it. Yeah, but I understand it though. That, and I know during COVID and lots of other tougher times, so but that the emphasis on greener spaces and getting outside has gone through a lot of strong emphasis. So but now that the research says that this supports new mothers from developing this mental health condition, then that just adds to why they're even more important. So I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. I really, really am looking forward to episode 100 of the podcast. That I really am looking forward to, but because I'm actually going to be talking about my psychology journey, which was also quite nicely timed because, of course, this week was my last ever week as an official undergraduate psychology student. So I had my last lectures, basically went to campus for the last time because my exams are online. And even though I'll be doing some bits during the summer, because they're not related to my undergraduate degree. I don't quite think they've got the same emphasis, even though I am looking forward to something that I'm doing over the summer at the uni. So it's definitely been a bit of a, and it was also the deadline of my final year project and my dissertation. And I was texting quite a lot of people, and we were all quite surprised about how relieved we are. But I also think of slightly mixed feelings though, because it was such a big part of our lives for so long, and now it's done. It's sort of wow, I'm really relieved because it's no longer there. It's no longer a part of my life. So really quite interesting feelings though. But by having enjoyed it, I was rather shocked there were only 8 of us in the lecture yesterday, even though it was 3 till 5 last day of term. I don't blame anyone. And I partly just went for the lecture, partly just went for the university Wi-Fi. Yeah, but this is something that I would definitely be reflecting on in more detail in one of my reflection books, and I might even do something on the podcast. But I don't know. I've not quite got the bug to do to do any podcast episodes, either about the final year project or about leaving university. So interesting. And also in exciting stuff this week, I launched my first ever science fiction Kickstarter. So I've done other Kickstarters before, and if anyone you know is a major science fiction fan, then you definitely want to check out this great Kickstarter because it contains 8 brand new gripping and affording compelling science fiction books from all the main subgenres of science fiction, like a space opera, science fiction adventure, military science fiction, and there are a lot of science fiction mysteries though. So I am going to keep this short because this is a psychology podcast and also a fiction a podcast though. But if you or anyone else that you know absolutely loves science fiction, then you've absolutely got to check out this great Kickstarter. It ends on the 27th of April 2023, and there are so many great rewards, and it's proving to be very, very popular. So definitely check it out. Link in the podcast description. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley.net. You can also leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And you can always send me pictures of where you listening in from. I would absolutely love that. And today's episode has been sponsored by Psychology of Relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more. So this is an absolutely brilliant sponsor for today's episode because not only does a miscarriage affect someone's mental health and their partner's mental health, but also affects the relationship. So this really great, really easy to understand book really does help you to get a deep understanding of how the psychology of relationships work. For example, how the biological, social and the cognitive factors work in the formation of a relationship, whether they be friendship or romantic relationship. And also this brand new edition also focuses on stuff like sexuality, homosexuality, basically why do we like the people that we do, and it also goes on to the very popular and very timely chapters of communication and why do relationships change and end. And I do have to confess here that I have actually used some of the theories in that chapter in my own friendships and relationships. Just to try and help me out a bit more though. Yes, it's always quite funny and a bit embarrassing to actually admit. And then the final chapter of the book goes on to talk about pro-social behaviour, like bystanderism, how do we promote pro-social behaviour, and so many more great topics. So if you want a really easy to understand book that actually really does help to improve your knowledge about the psychology of relationships, then definitely check it out. So that is Psychology of Relationships, the Social Psychology of Friendships, Romantic Relationships, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And if you want to support me directly, then you can buy the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/Con Wiley. And buying it directly from authors is always a good idea if you can, because it means that the authors get more percentage of the income instead of these larger companies taking massive cuts. So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about how do men grieve miscarriages. And this is such a great episode. Let's dive into it. So I wanted to start off at this episode by saying that miscarriages are normal and extremely awful for people who experience them, because 1 in 5 pregnancies end up in a miscarriage, and this does negatively impact the miscarrying woman and her own social network, as well as miscarriages do occur inside and outside of a wide range of relationships, but typically they happen in heterosexual and cisgender people. Therefore, the effects of a miscarriage sends shockwaves through a social network system and the relationships, leading to an increased chance of the couple getting divorced, going all 2010, or breaking up. In addition, when it comes to men, they often suffer from grief, anxiety, and depression after a miscarriage, as well as at times their own mental health difficulty lasts longer than their partner's does. Farron and all 2001. This only makes the fact that men often feel ignored or stopped from grieving even worse, and they may feel the pressure from society and their friends to be stoic, emotionless, and apparently strong, so they don't grieve. This only ends badly. Not only because men need to cope with their grief for the sake of their mental as well as physical health, but for the sake of the relationship and their partner's health too. Everything interacts when it comes to mental health, after all. How metaphor can be used to help men grieve a miscarriage. The work of Hosman and all 2019 was a very interesting reading, and they looked at the stories of 45 white, straight, married men and how a miscarriage impacted them. Also, what was really interesting is that they made sense of the loss and the miscarriage by using metaphors. That's certainly a new take on this important issue. We all know from English class that metaphors are a set of tools that we use to help us understand confusing ideas or events by linking them with a familiar idea, event, or concept. Therefore, in the work Horseman and all, what they did was get participants to use metaphors to reflect society's very limited knowledge about how common miscarriages are, and how society morphs this into a very taboo topic. Not only so that people can always believe that miscarriage is very rare, and I've heard conversations so that blame the mother for a miscarriage, but also so people experiencing miscarriage cannot grieve for the loss because it is such a taboo subject. One common theme of the metaphors used was the idea of a lost gift. Another idea was that wonderful gift you received and is suddenly taken away. Some participants said that this was like a present under the tree, only to find it broken or missing when you opened it. Or a participant described it as being given the winning lottery ticket, but you were one number away. That seriously would be annoying. As well as that's why metaphors are so important in human communication, because I don't have kids and I wouldn't have them for like at least another decade if I ever do. But even I can understand that feeling of a lost gift, a lost a precious item, and the lottery idea. I can understand all of that, and it would be truly awful. However, other people describe a miscarriage as a profound emptiness that fills you right up. You feel like you have empty legs, empty chest, and empty heart, because that lost baby has left such a gap and void in your world, leaving these men feeling hopeless and restless. Finally, men can describe a miscarriage as something unexpected, devastated, and sudden, like a cataclysm, or maybe something like a natural disaster, leading men to feel like the miscarriage is a tragedy, and the men were onlookers of this tragedy and couldn't do anything to stop it, like witnessing their loved one was in a car crash and they could only stand and watch the destruction and fallout happen. These metaphors were all to show that the participant was helpless as they tried to help their devastated partner through both emotional and physical pain, and this links to a point earlier about how men aren't really helped and there is no support for them too. Conclusion. Overall, I'm telling you all this because I want all to understand that the idea that men don't care or grieve about miscarriages is such a myth and it has to end. I also want to highlight that yes, miscarriages are the dark topic in a society. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk more openly about them, not only so that we all understand the truth about miscarriages, like their likelihood, but also so that the men and women that have to go through this horrible event don't feel isolated, pressured, and abandoned because society deems this topic too taboo to actually talk about it. That tabooness has to end outright. Connecting this to social psychology, we are a social species, and our communication comes under social psychology too. Therefore, the metaphors that men use to describe and explain how it feels to have a miscarriage will hopefully provide all of you with a better understanding of what it's like to have a romantic partner experience this type of loss. Then, if we understand how it feels, then we can better support the men and women experiencing this, perhaps better in the form of our own private conversations and the larger, more societal discourse too. That would be nice. And maybe if you've experienced your own miscarriage, then maybe this has validated you. Maybe you can finally realise that you are okay to grieve, be sad and emotional during this impossible time. I don't know, but I know that there is something in the US, and other countries probably have it too, the National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So we're getting those in that in your own way. And I think the UK had a similar then in March, because one of my favourite politicians, she shared something about it, like during the week or something. I truly hope none of us ever have to experience a miscarriage, but if you do, or if someone that you know experiences one, then it is critical we all support each other and allow people to talk about it. Nothing good comes from keeping everything bottled up, but so please, don't let it. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I know this was a dark topic, and this is something that we really do try to avoid in society. Like, this is one of my worst fears, basically, having like a miscarriage. Well, no, obviously not me, but someone in my family, someone I know, someone I love having it. That is honestly my worst nightmare. But at least if we talk about it as long as we know that it's okay to grieve and we know that there is support out there, then it makes it a tad less scary. And if it does happen, then there is support and we can help. I think that's the most important thing from today's episode. And if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more about relationships and communication, definitely check out Psychology of Relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more. Available in all the usual places, and you can buy it at my PayHip store at payhip.com/Con But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you still wanted to support the podcast, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Con. And if you know anyone who loves science fiction, then definitely check out my Kickstarter before the 27th of April 2023. If you're a science fiction fan, you're absolutely going to love it. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.